the Iowa Civil Liberties Union had a woman, Louise Noun, and she had inherited a fortune, so she was a philanthropist, but with a very strong civil libertarian bent. So she had been a patroness of the Iowa Civil Liberties Union for a long time, and they offered to handle our legal expenses, and they had a young lawyer, a 29-year-old lawyer, Dan Johnston, who took our case pro bono, and so that's how the ACLU became involved. And later, actually, my mother in St. Louis, when they had moved by then from Des Moines to St. Louis, our mother was involved in a lead paint coalition against landlords that weren't dealing with the lead paint issue, and the kids were eating the paint chips and getting health damage from that. So she was a social activist about that at that time, and she actually worked with William Kunstler again, or for the first time actually, but they met again. But anyway, no, that's how the ICLU and then the ACLU became involved in the case.
Yeah, I met Kunstler a few times because, like I said, I'm from New York, and I was with the Yippies in New York, Youth International Party, and he was the Yippie lawyer for the Yippies down there.
Well, now, since you brought it up, I was at a rally during the Chicago 7 or 8 trial,
okay.
And Abby Hoffman had come down to St. Louis. Now, my mother had worked with Abby Hoffman to help organize one of the national demonstrations in Washington. So after I was way at the back of this thing, we got there late, and Abby Hoffman was giving a talk telling the whole huge crowd about the trial up in Chicago. And afterward, my mom kind of took my sleeve and she dragged me through the crowd, and she's saying, Abby, I want you to meet my son, so so anyway, I got up and shook his big warm hand, just a big warm-hearted guy, and he's sitting there he's got a dirty red T-shirt on, and it's up above his belly, and he's scratching his belly, talking to me, but I really became aware of what it's like to have such a focus on social change that he and Jerry Rubin and that whole bunch did way back then. They really thought that it was worthwhile to make a full commitment, and so with the Yippie and all of that, I was my heart was there.
For students today in school, what are their rights of free speech?
Well, the main right that you have is to express your opinion, as long as it's not explicitly promoting drug use that's illegal, which is the Morse v. Frederick or the Blankets for Jesus case. And then it cannot use sexual innuendo in the language. That's the Bethel v. Frazier case. And it also cannot be under the imprimatur of the school. So if it's a school-sponsored event or publication, then they can control the content. But other than that, if you are expressing your opinion in a non-disruptive way to the educational environment, then you have your full First Amendment right to do that.
So what would you recommend a student do then if they want to express their opinions and they're doing it in a non-disruptive way, has nothing to do with drugs, it's not a school-sponsored event, and they followed all the Tinker Standard, right, they call it, right? They followed all the Tinker Standard, but still they're being denied their First Amendment right. What should they do?
Well, contact the ACLU is always a good first step. They're funded to some degree, and they have the resources to deal with it. A lot of times, all they have to do is make a phone call to the school administration and explain what the real deal is, because the law is pretty clear on that. If in the decision, Abe Fortas wrote, that Justice Abe Fortas wrote that there needs to be a material and substantial disruption to the educational environment before the school authorities can clamp down on it. And he says in so many words, basically, that a little bit of disruption has to be tolerated, because that's the way our society is, and that's the way a democracy works. And so if you have students that have come up with a non-disruptive way to just let their opinion be known, then there's really you've got the right to do that is pretty well established. Even conservative justices like Samuel Alito is very clear on that. That the Supreme Court has said a number of times, really, not just in our case, in the cases that are quoted by our case, the Supreme Court has pointed out over and over again that we are not a totalitarian society, and the schools can't be what they call enclaves of totalitarianism. So once that's explained to school administrations, often they come around, and it never gets to a court.
So they should complain to the principal or to the school district, the school board?
Well, basically what you want to do is let the school know that you know what your rights are. And let them contact their lawyer or whatever and have it explained to them if they really don't understand. But it's very clearly established. This is not one of those murky areas. If the students are not disruptive to the educational environment, then there's nothing the administration can legally do.
I mean,
they can misbehave. You can have misbehavior at any point, but once a lawyer has explained it, even their own lawyer, and that really happens.
And so the fact that the students are underage, they have just as much rights, free speech rights as an adult.
Absolutely, with the proviso that there is compulsory education,
right. And
so the students that are in school are not allowed to disrupt what they call the educational environment. So,
now, what about walkouts? You see all these walkouts now. They're over the gun situation, school shootings. What a different world! What is that covered?
No. In fact, that would be the school board would use our case probably to argue their side, because our case establishes the right to express your opinion in a way that doesn't disrupt the educational environment. And it's the special circumstances of the school. The walkout is disruptive to the educational environment. So the walkout, I wouldn't say don't do it. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying don't do it. But be prepared to that if the administration of your school is really being, okay, insert your ugly word here, okay, if they are really can't understand why students could be especially concerned about this sort of thing, and the gun violence, especially down where you are, where you just had that horrific event. I mean, if the administrator, I saw an administrator in Texas had said that he was going to suspend students who walked out. But, I mean, all administrators are not nasty people. And some of them just are unenlightened. I'll give them that. He might be a nice guy that just hasn't quite got it yet. That everything is not always about following those old rules. Sometimes new things happen, and you kind of have to make exceptions. And when you have a whole bunch of school kids getting killed, that's worth an exception. And there are a lot of school administrators that are going with that and are going to be with their kids, and they're going to walk to the state legislature or whatever it is.
Yeah, my daughter is in the middle right now of negotiating with the principal about a walkout that they're planning. Now, is there a website or something they can point to? Wikipedia? Would they look up a Tinker Standard and show them that?
If you, well, for instance, on my own website of all of these thousands of news feeds, I do have one on Tinker v. Des Moines. So if you go, there's a shortcut to it. For your listeners, if they go to schema-root.org/tinker, that's schema-root.org/tinker, all lowercase, that would get you to my page, and on that page I've got all of the resources that I would normally send to high school students and so on that are doing projects about the case. So it's a kind of a collection point. I guess I have some dead links that I need to deal with there, but most of them are good. And it also has a current news feed. And so from that news feed, there are stories that refer to the case basically nearly every day. And in